Good morning, boys and girls. This is our 5th grade science class. I am Ms. Gilbert.
And I am Mr. Mitchell.
And today we'll be learning about the water cycle. Why don't you show them an example?
All right, class, I have a question for you. About how old do you think the water in this bottle is? How old?
How many of you think you got it right? Well, your answer may be incorrect if you didn't say this.
The answer is the water in this bottle is actually about 4.5 billion years old, and that's because the water is about as old as the earth. You may think that it was maybe a year or two old because it just rained or whatever and it got purified, but the water's been around forever because the water keeps spinning in our water cycle. Next. In this lesson, we'll be discussing the process that takes place in the water cycle. The 5 stages or phases of the water cycle include condensation, precipitation, transpiration, collection, and evaporation.
And here's a diagram of all of the different phases.
Next.
Evaporation. Now everyone knows about evaporation, right? This happens when something simple as you putting water in a pot on the stove and you put it at like 100 maybe degrees Fahrenheit, and you watch the steam come up from the pot. That's called evaporation. That's when water gets heated and from a steam or a lake or a river or ocean, and it turns into water vapor and comes into the atmosphere and goes back to its original source, into the clouds.
Next. All right, transpiration. Transpiration is a form of evaporation. Transpiration is when the water is released from the plants into the air, not just directly from water sources like lakes, rivers, ponds, and streams. So when the sun heats up the plants, it comes directly from the plants and into our atmosphere.
Next. Let's not forget that plants have water too, so that's another water source. And condensation, let's remember that there's clouds that are formed by water. That water vapor that comes up from evaporation, it goes and forms clouds. And this is the process called condensation.
Another form of condensation would be fog. Fog is just basically a cloud that's on the ground. Next. Precipitation. We all know what precipitation is. Precipitation occurs when water accumulates into a cloud so much that it has to release it back onto the Earth's surface. This is rain. Rain, sleet, or snow. Any form of that. We're all used to that. Next.
And last but not least, collection. Now this is simple. When you're walking and it's raining, don't you see like a big puddle of water? That happens when the precipitation comes down and comes back into the Earth's surface, and then it forms into something, a collection of water. That collection can be added to a river, a lake, or an ocean, or coming together to form a puddle on concrete.
Another form of collection would be all the rain and water that seeps into the earth, and that is called groundwater. That's another form of collection. And that concludes our demonstration for the water cycle. Now, in just a minute, we'll show you a game or activity that we have to help you.
All right, class, now it's time for our activity. This is called the water cycle matching game. Now, in this game, there can be up to 3 players. After you pick the first player, you allow them to take their turn. They pick up one card and they flip it over. Oh, I picked up evaporation. Since I did pick up evaporation, I have to say the correct definition of this phase of the water cycle. For instance, evaporation is when water flows from the ocean back into the atmosphere as water vapor. That would be the correct answer. However, if I said the incorrect answer, I would have to put the card back in its place, and then my turn would be over. The next person's turn begins. But since I said the right one, I pick up my card and I go looking for the matching evaporation phase. Oh, look, I found evaporation. Both of the phases are when water flows from the ocean back into the atmosphere in the form of water vapor. I now have 2 points because I just found the matching card, and 1 + 1 = 2.
Good morning, class. Once again, I am Mr. Mitchell, and today we'll be demonstrating condensation. For our step one, we're going to put a piece of cardboard in the freezer, or a book will work too. We're going to leave it in there for about an hour, and I've already done so. So here's our book, A Great Gatsby. And our next step is to have a pot of boiling water on the stove. So what we're going to do is, I have tongs, and students, when you do this at home, you have to have parental guidance. And we're going to hold it over the steam so that we can see what happens. As you can see, the hot water vapor is condensating onto the cold book because it's cooling off. Okay, class, as I said before, the reason we have condensation is because when the hot water evaporates onto the frozen book, it cools off. Just like when the sun heats up the water in the oceans, streams, rivers, and ponds, and evaporates into the sky and cools off to form clouds.